Hello, everyone, and welcome to English Digest. I'm Mike.
And I'm Tom.
And today, Tom, we are on day 2 of our Casting a Ballot unit. That's right, in our life article for this month, we're casting a ballot 2,000 years of voting. It seems very fitting because it's election time here in Taiwan. The election will be in, I believe, 8 days from now. It's all getting very exciting. But yesterday and today, we were reading sort of about the development of voting, casting ballots, democracies, choosing your leader by using a vote. Countries have been doing this for a long time. You might think 100 years, 300 years maybe. Try 2,000 years, yes, or possibly even more, going back to the time of ancient Rome and ancient Greece before that. So yesterday we had a bit of a history lesson, and today we're going to be looking at a bit more about how voting works in the world today, but in different parts of the world away from Taiwan.
Exactly. So we all know how voting is done here in Taiwan. So yeah, let's talk about some other places, Estonia, Gambia, Australia, and Argentina. We've got lots of interesting examples to get to today. So hey, let's start our lesson by reading through the entirety of our lesson, and then we'll talk about it. There are some interesting variations on voting around the world. In Estonia, for example, people can vote online, while in Gambia, people vote by rolling marbles into colored metal drums. In some countries, including Australia, those who don't vote can be fined, and in Brazil and Argentina, non-voters could even lose some of their civil rights. In many countries, people living overseas can vote back home using an absentee ballot, as can U.S. astronauts who email their votes and give their addresses as lower Earth orbit. In Taiwan, however, there are no absentee ballots. Taiwanese people living or working overseas have to come back to vote. What's more, as many people don't change their legal address until they own a house, they have to return to their hometowns to vote. There are also restrictions on voting age. People can't take part in presidential or legislative elections until they're 20, 2 years older than the legal voting age in many other democracies. However, people aged 18 and over can vote in referendums, which allow citizens to give their opinion on matters of public policy. So, what do you need to remember when the time comes to vote in Taiwan? First of all, don't forget your ID card, or you won't be permitted to vote. Another useful thing to bring is your personal stamp, which you use to make your mark before receiving your ballot paper. If you forget this or don't have one, you'll have to use your fingerprint instead. But the most important thing to remember is that if you can vote, you should vote. It's your right to have your say on a decision that could significantly affect your future. Okay, let's start discussing our lesson for today. Again, the title is Casting a Ballot, or Voting. And we're talking about 2,000 years of voting. But, we've come up to the present day, and we're talking about voting habits in different parts of the world.
That's right. Now, in many parts of the world, people do it like they do here in Taiwan. You go down, you bring your ID card, show them who you are, they give you a piece of paper. There's a little secret area where you can kind of mark your paper where others can't see you, and then you fold the paper and put it in a box, and they count all those votes at the end. That's pretty standard. It's a pretty solid system that they've been using for a long time. But don't be fooled into thinking it's the only way to vote these days. No, of course not. Yes, some places use computers, but that's a fairly high-tech way to vote. And other places, well, they use some even more interesting methods. Let's check out one. It says there are some interesting variations on voting around the world. A variation is a different way of doing something or a different version of something. Version is V-E-R-S-I-O-N. We can have lots of different things. Sort of the same in all the important ways, but slightly different in some smaller ways. Those are different versions or different variations on something. So here we're all voting, but we're all voting in a different way. Let's look at the country of Estonia. They're in Eastern Europe. In Estonia, for example, people can vote online. Wow, that's very high-tech. So they vote on the internet. While in Gambia, a small country in Western Africa, people vote by rolling marbles into colored metal drums. exams. I'm not sure I've ever heard that. I can't really imagine how it works, but it sounds like fun.
Yeah, they might do that to encourage people to vote. That does sound fun, like you said.
I'm not sure you could actually get your marble to go where you want it to, but I guess you probably can. Otherwise, this isn't really voting. It's more like a lucky draw.
Could be, but in any case, it does sound fun, and maybe they have different colored marbles or something like that. And in some countries, including Australia, those who don't vote can be fined, which doesn't sound good. I know in America, of course, you're not required to vote,
right?
And lots of people don't vote.
Yep.
Sometimes voting in America is pretty inconvenient because they have the election night on Thursday night or a weekday night or something.
And Monday night, I think the elections are Tuesday, and you don't get the day off, right? In other countries, everybody gets the day off to make it easy for you to go and vote.
Right. So in Australia, of course, I guess they're required by law to vote. So if you don't vote, you might be fined. The government might make you pay a fine, just like you would if you, drove too fast on the highway or something like that. And also shifting to South America here, and in Brazil and Argentina, non-voters could even lose some of their civil rights, which doesn't sound good. If you don't vote, you might lose your right, I don't know, civil rights here to own property or something like that, which sounds kind of severe here.
Absolutely. I guess the idea is to get everyone to vote, but yeah, sometimes, a small fine would be a good thing. Taking away people's rights, that's a little bit different. So I suppose in Australia, almost 100% of the people vote, which is good. In America, where they don't make you vote, it's like around 45% of people actually vote?
It varies from election to election.
50, 55. It's around half, though. So that's the idea behind these laws. Okay, let's move on. It says in many countries, people living overseas can vote back home using an absentee ballot, as can U.S. astronauts who email their votes and give their addresses as lower Earth orbit. Well, that's a pretty good excuse for not being able to vote. Sorry, I was in space. But even if you are in space, you can still vote. At least you can if you're an American. But people who live outside of the country, who live overseas, this would be, for example, like Tom, who's American but lives in Taiwan. Myself, I'm Canadian, but I live in Taiwan as well. We could vote back home. We could vote in our local home elections, but by using an absentee ballot. If you're absent, you're away. If you're sick and you don't go to school, you're away that day. You're absent. So if you are that person, you are an absentee. You are a person who is absent. So these absentee ballots are basically ballots for people who live outside the country, and even U.S. astronauts. People who go to space are astronauts. People who work on the International Space Station, we would call them astronauts. So if you're a spaceman, a space person, you can still vote. When they ask you, where do you live? You don't write down your street address, of course, your hometown address back on Earth. You write lower Earth orbit, basically meaning I'm in space, but not too far from the Earth, kind of moving in a circle.
So I guess they're eligible to vote even if they're on the International Space Station. Isn't that nice?
That's cool.
But for me, if I want to vote in the American election, I need to get an absentee ballot, which is kind of difficult to get, actually. I don't really know who to write to or how to apply for it.
But you could do that here in Taiwan. You wouldn't have to fly back to America, right?
That's the point, yes. You don't have to be present in order to vote. But that's not the case in Taiwan, as it says here in the next paragraph. So let's find out what this is all about here. In Taiwan, however, there are no absentee ballots. So if you happen to be overseas doing business, or you're studying in the US or Canada or Europe or something like that, you've got to actually fly all the way back to Taiwan to vote. And that can be kind of a hassle there. It can kind of be troublesome if you have to do that, but that's the law here. They require you to actually be present in order to cast your ballot.
Very interesting. Hopefully, since it's in early January, some people might have come back for Christmas or New Year's or come home early for Chinese New Year and they can vote, because you're right. Flying halfway around the country just to vote in an election would be kind of difficult, although that would be nice. It says in Taiwan, no absentee ballots, so they have to come back to vote. What's more, as many people don't change their legal address until they own a house, they have to return to their hometowns to vote. Yeah, this is another unusual thing about Taiwan. A lot of what the government knows about you is based on your home address. But if you kind of, grow up and maybe move to your own apartment, your home address is still that house where you grew up, still that house where you were living as a young person. We've often heard this. There's an election. Your friend who lives in Taipei says, oh, I have to go back to Kaohsiung or Tainan, where I'm from, where my family home is. I have to go back there this weekend so that I can vote. That's the idea. When we use this expression, what's more, it's basically like and, additionally, also. We're adding something else that is a different fact, but similar idea to what we were talking about. So it's a good phrase to use as a link inside one of your paragraphs when you're just adding one idea onto the end. And we also had this term legal. Tell us all about being legal, Tom.
Well, that means it's not illegal. It's legal. It's lawful. You don't break the law if you do it. And this is your legal address, the place you're registered. I think that's called huji in Taiwanese, or excuse me, in Chinese. So, of course, a lot of people have their legal address down south somewhere in the central part of Taiwan. And I've often found that kind of unusual. Hey, are you going to vote in the election? And they say, well, yeah, but I've got to go down to Chiayi to do that. What? You live here in Taipei. Why do you have to do that? Well, my legal address is down in Chiayi, so I've got to go down there. But what the heck? That's a good excuse to go back home and visit relatives or something like that. It can be a lot of fun. So that, of course, is the situation in Taiwan. You won't change your legal address until you own a house. And your hometown, of course, is where you're from. If you're from Shuishang, for example, down in Chiayi, that would be your hometown.
Interesting. I guess it makes sense if you're choosing the president who's the leader of the whole country. But to me, if you live in Taipei, but then you have to go back to Kaohsiung and you're voting for politicians in Kaohsiung, when you come back to Taipei, these people aren't going to be doing anything for you. Do you know what I mean? So in some ways, they should make it easier to change your household registration so that the voting can be more accurate and hopefully more helpful. But there are other restrictions on voting. We're going to read not only where you live and if you are a citizen of the country. It says there are also restrictions on voting age. Yeah, you have to be over 20 to vote in Taiwan, I believe. There's some talk of changing it to the way it is in most Western countries where you have to be over 18. Here it's in Taiwan, it's over 20. This is a restriction. A restriction is basically a rule, a limit, something that says you can't do this or it can't go above this. When you're driving on the road, there are always speed restrictions, right? On the highway, you can drive around 100 or 110 kilometers an hour, but in a city street, maybe 40 or 50. These are speed restrictions, limits, numbers that you cannot go over.
Right. For example, here in Taiwan, I think there are restrictions on gun ownership.
Oh, my gosh, yes.
Not everybody can buy a gun like they can in the USA. So, of course, there are restrictions here on voting age. Here it says people can't take part in presidential or legislative elections until they're 22 years older than the legal voting age in many other democracies. So here we've got the phrase to take part in. That just means to participate, to enjoy the privilege of voting here. And you can vote for the president or you can vote for a legislator. That would be a legislative election. But you can't do that unless you're 20. But when you're 18, you can vote in referendums, which we'll get to in a second. But right now we're going to take a break and listen to our Chinese teacher.
Hi everyone, my name is Jenny. 今天我们要继续来看第二单元，谈到投票。投票呢，在各个国家其实也有一点不同。从北欧的爱沙尼亚到非洲的甘比亚，再到澳大利亚，然后呢，再到巴西到阿根廷，它的方式跟规定都有一些不同，一些差异，一些 variations。好，那我们来看看这边提到有些国家，像美国人居住在海外的话，你怎么投呢？这边就说到有一种制度叫做 absentee ballot。Absentee 指的是缺席者，不在的人，所以这个叫做缺席投票。换句话说，你可以用这样子的方式，即使人不在美国本土，你在海外也可以投票哦。那我们要注意到的是文法上，这边提到说 can vote back home using an absentee ballot， 后面再接的 as can you as astronauts。 us 这个字它很特别，因为呢，像在这样子的句构里面，它就是一个准关代。其实我们说的关代关系代名词，想到的应该是 which， 想到的是 who， 可是 us 这个字说起来跟 which 和 who 都不同，因为它的语义上就是正如同，如同什么也一样，所以它语气上是不一样的但是它一样可以像关系代名词一样，它代替前面提过的一个叙述。像这个地方，它指的就是说，前面讲说你可以一样不在国内，然后你是用缺席投票来投票回去那美国的太空人他也可以这样做，所以在语义上的 us 它其实跟 which 和 who 不同，它的语义上也一样，也是可以这么做的。好，也就是 can vote back home， 就算你在外太空也可以。他们是用 email 的方式来投票。好咯，再来我们继续来看下面说，那么台湾呢？台湾当然目前我们还没有这种所谓的 absentee ballot 这种的制度如果你在国外，那你就得要回到台湾来投票而且呢，你也知道，我们一般通常不会去改我们的户籍地址，除非你换了房子，有了房子才会换地址。所以这边就有一个句型上，他说到many people don't often change their legal address until they own the house。 这个 not until 这个句型我们常见，就是知道怎么样才怎样。我们平常是不会去动的，一直到也就是直到你有了房子才会去改地址。好， not until。接下来下一段也一样，它的一开头的句子里面呢，它就用到了这个 not until。 他说到说，我们这里是一直到20岁，然后你才可以投选总统，可以投立法委员。好， not until。
We're going to take a short break now, but please stay tuned. We'll be right back.
All right, so we're still back here talking about voting as we read the second half of Day 2 of Casting a Ballot, 2,000 Years of Voting. Yesterday, we covered sort of the history. Today, we're covering the present truth, the present reality, the present situation in places that vote, that have elections like this. And here in Taiwan, we were just talking about the age restrictions. In Taiwan, you have to be over 20, or 20 years, I should say, to vote in a legislative or presidential elections, to pick the leaders of the countries. Now, it's kind of too bad because in some Western countries you can be a few years younger. 18 is the age limit in Canada, the US, Britain, places like that. But if you are 18 in Taiwan, you can still vote in certain types of elections. Well, it's not quite an election. It has a different name, right?
Indeed, and it's called a referendum, sometimes called a plebiscite, in which people can vote for a particular policy or something, and it may or may not be valid. Like last year or so, or maybe 1.5 years ago, there was a referendum on various issues. One of them was same-sex marriage, and my daughter was quite excited about that because she was 18 at the time, and she could vote in the referendum, but she won't be 20 years old in order to vote in the presidential election, which is just coming up in a couple of days.
Oh, so a few more years and then she'll be able to vote in the first legislative election, I guess, when she's over 20. All right, let's move on to our final paragraph. So, it asks, so what do you need to remember when the time comes to vote in Taiwan? So let's say you're over 18 and there's a referendum, or you're over 20 and there's an election. What do you need to remember when the time comes to vote? What do you need so that you can vote on that election day? Well, first of all, here's a good tip. Don't forget your ID card, or you won't be permitted to vote. You can't just walk in and go, hey, it's me. And they'll look at you like, who are you? It's me. And they're like, yeah, we don't know who you are. You'd need your ID card. something from the government with your face, your name, your birth date, all that basic information, ID card, passport, either. I don't know if either would work, but both would be definitely okay. And those will allow you to vote. You will be permitted to vote. And to permit is basically to say it's okay for you to do that. If you want to stay up late to watch TV, you might want to ask your parents, and then if they're in a good mood, they'll say, okay, you can stay up for one more hour to, play games, watch TV, whatever. You are permitted, you are allowed to do that. So bring your ID. That way you can prove who you are.
Indeed. So again, permit here is to allow someone to do something, as you said. As an example, I could say smoking is not permitted in restaurants all over Taiwan. If you want to smoke, you've got to go someplace else. And moving on now to the next sentence here, it says, another useful thing to bring besides your ID card is your personal stamp, which is sometimes called your chop, and you use this to make your mark before receiving your ballot paper, which of course could also be referred to as your ballot. And that's when you mark your vote. Of course, you have a particular stamp that you use to mark your vote. I think they probably have the boxes for each candidate, and the one you want is where you make your stamp on the paper, and hopefully your man or your woman will win.
That's right. It's a good idea to bring your chop, your stamp. Not only will it make it easier, it also allow you to vote without getting your hands dirty. It says if you forget this is your personal stamp. If you forget this or don't have one, you'll have to use your fingerprint instead. So they'll mark up your fingerprint, maybe your thumb or your first finger or a few fingers with ink, just like you see them do at the police station when they catch somebody. And then you'll have to press your fingerprints, your dirty, inky fingerprints all over the paper. Then you'll get the ink on your shirt. And so much trouble. So just bring your stamp. But the most important thing to remember is that if you can vote, you should vote. Absolutely. If you're over 20, if you're in the country, you don't have any excuses. You can't say, there's something good on TV or I'm too lazy. No, you got to go down and vote. Because here's the thing. If you don't vote, you can't complain about politics for the next 4 years.
Indeed.
That's what I say.
I agree, too. So, yeah, if you complain later, you can ask somebody, hey, well, did you vote? Well, no, I didn't.
That's right.
Then you shouldn't be belly aching. You shouldn't be complaining about it. So that's the most important thing to remember. You should vote if you have that right. But as I said before, of course, people here in Taiwan get pretty excited about elections. So the turnout is pretty strong. There are some people who don't care. They probably think, my vote's not going to make any difference. I'm just going to stay home and play with my phone. I'm not going to waste time. Besides, the lines are really long. I think the last time there was that referendum when my wife and my daughter went down to cast their votes in that, they had to wait in line or wait in the queue for quite some time. I think they were in that line for about an hour there, but they didn't seem to mind, especially my daughter, because it was her first time voting. She was very excited about that.
Good, absolutely. And yes, sometimes when they have these elections, when a lot of people show up, or they have many questions to ask, many questions on the referendum, like last time, it will slow down. But the good thing is, I remember people complained about that. I believe the government's probably come up with a faster, more efficient, more useful way to get people to vote without making them wait in line. But you're right. Just think about if you don't like voting or if you think the lines are too long, well, how would you like to live in a country like North Korea or China where no one's allowed to vote? If you think about it that way, then you might go, well, waiting in line a little bit to have rights, to have, freedom and a voice in who leads me, it's not such a bad thing.
Indeed. So again, it's your right to have your say on a decision that could significantly affect your future. Now, this word affect here is kind of tricky. Affect with an A and affect with an E are very similar in meaning, and even though they are both nouns and verbs, the word affect is most often used as a verb, whereas the word affect with an E is most often used as a noun. I could say, the rain had no effect on our decision to go bicycling. We went anyway, and so we had a lot of fun, even though we got very wet. It had no effect on our decision. But here, affect, again, is a verb, and it means to have some kind of influence on the way things happen in the future.
That's right. So there's an affect, some kind of change, and that produces an effect with the E. That is the change. That is how things worked out after it was affected with an A. All right, so there you go. So yes, affect your future, have a good effect on your country by exercising your democratic right to vote. It's only 4 years. It doesn't take that long, and I think you get the day off here in Taiwan, right? So
yeah.
What does anyone have to complain about? Go out and vote. You're lucky to be able to do it. I wish it's as easy for me to vote for Canadian politics as it is for you guys in your home country, and it's a wonderful right that's taken us 2,000 years to get, and it's not something we want to give up.
Okay, so that brings us to the end of our explanation, but we need to hear once again from our Chinese teacher.
好，我们继续来看这篇文章。回到台湾，谈台湾的投票制度、选举制度。20岁才可以选总统，20岁才可以选立委。这跟美国来说，当然就是年龄上是大2岁。不过如果你只有18岁呢，下面就说你是可以投Referendum 就是公投。好，这个 referendums 后面有个逗点，接下来 which allow citizens to give their opinion on matters of public policy. 这个地方注意到逗点，当然这就是非限定用法。你讲的就是指公投这件事情，公投它的用意意思就是下面补充说明的关系子句。好，再来，接下来最后这一段呢，提醒大家要投票了，要带什么呢？好，当然以下他就讲了几个事情，不过我们在英文尤其写作上面，当你要列举1、2、3、4，你会用到一些 transition words， 那这些的片语要特别的注意，比如说这边就用到 first of all， 第一个要记得带你的身份证，接下来他又说 another， 那就是还有什么你要带呢？ Your personal stamp， 就是你私章个人的印章。好，这还没完哦，到最后他又说到还有一点非常重要的the most important thing。 好，这都是在列举的过程里面我会用到的片语，请你要记得咯。假如你真的能投票，就要去投票。好，不要忘记，因为 it's your right to have your say. Have your say 就是表示有权利发表看法。好，我们今天讲解就到这边结束，谢谢大家。
Okay, that brings us to the end of our lesson for today. Hopefully, you'll have a wonderful time voting in the next election. It should be a lot of fun, and hopefully the right person will win. From all of us here at English Digest, I'm Tom.
And I'm Mike.
Goodbye.
Take care.